Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about a modification to the parabolic stop and reverse Dca combination. This modification allows very small time frames to be unusually profitable, more so than what would be expected out of the time frame itself. The uniqueness of this combination also allows 1 second time frames to be very profitable, something that is very difficult and unusual to achieve at this level. Even more difficult with a trading program that may have 5 or 6 seconds lag. So it does need to be tested carefully, and it does need to be evaluated even more restrictively. I have this set to 9 positions maximum before it exits out, just because of the high risk associated with this kind of a time frame. It works on multiple time frames and it does very well. But each time frame has its own unique dynamics, and you do need to spend a great deal of time carefully analyzing exactly what those results are. This is a recipe that can go very well or very bad. But as you can see from the average profit, it does exceptional. But it does require careful attention. Unlike the standard parabolic stop and reverse process, this has an extra mixture to it that does find some very interesting entry points. This mixture is my own witch's brew, the Rule 37. It is part of the moving averages module, and I will go over that next. But as you can see, with careful analysis of a coin and a good, solid coin, results are quite impressive. Including this one, for example, 71% profit. Now, of course, to achieve that kind of result requires exposure, and that is risk. But as you can see, if you can manage to handle the exposure and the risk, this particular position is one single position of $11 in my case, but 71% return on $11. If this had been a $100 position, then that would have been a $71 profit. A $1,000 position would have been a $710 profit. For basically $5 months of holding. Now, of course, there's no knowing where the market is going to go for the kind of risks involved for holding a coin for 5 months. But nonetheless, if you have the tolerances for such a risk, $710 for one single profit is staggering. I personally prefer the lower time frames as it fits my own personal risk assessment. In this case, basically 3.5 days with a crude 30% profit on my position size. Maximum exposure of $100 for this one single coin. So this helps me eliminate unnecessary risk, but still achieving a very good profit. So let's now move into the details. Let's start with the Dca module. There's nothing overly bright about it. Strategic purchase and strategic sell. Now there are plenty of opportunities to manually sell if you feel comfortable. But from my standpoint, this is let it run, and if I have an opportunity, I'll take it. If not, I will simply let it cook and process on its own. Deviation is 0. Take profit is 0. I want this entirely driven by the strategy itself. Now you can set a take profit if you want, but that is not necessary. And of course, exit. 9 positions. So after my 9th position, if I was to purchase a 10th one, I want out. You can play with this appropriate to your risk assessment, but I personally find for the level I am working, $100 is more than enough risk for one single coin. Plus it allows me to trade several different coins and diversify against the market. Now you'll notice I've turned off deviation because it's really not needed at this stage. I already know if I run into an exit position, it's going to have an impact. And my maximum is always going to be whatever my exit position is. It's useful for statistics if you want to know the average number of purchases. For the standpoint of what I am looking for this recipe, it is not really necessary for me to know that, because I can simply look at the chart and see what opportunities I may have or may not have. Sometimes it purchases at very low intervals, whereas other times the intervals may be drastic. But as you can see from the purchases, they are fairly limited for the most part. This fits my trading profile, and it does so very well for the risks involved in this situation. And as you can see, in and a very high out. But let's look at this. An exit position. It got in $99 worth. Instead of making the 10th purchase, it got out. So even with the exit positions, this is still making an average of 3% profit. That is an important and very significant factor for this time frame. The 1 minute time frame generally does not sustain profits above 2%. And even then, depending upon the market, a 2% profit may be pushing the extremes. So for this to have such a result for this coin is quite good. So let's look at another coin. .5% on Algorand. Now it's in a trade. As you can see right now, it's 5% above average. Up here might have been 7%, worth taking manually. Again, these are considerations that need to be made on the basis of your own personal risk assessment. .5%, and it's out of the trade. As you can see, it's sold off over here. So let's see what the moving average looks like. Rule 37. As I said, this is my own special creation. Let's see the settings. Okay, here it is. Very simple. And this is not inverted. Some people might call this the path of least resistance, which is true on how it works. You can modify this to different combinations, but I found this works well as it is. And of course, finally, the standard parabolic stop and reverse. As you can see on the 1 minute chart, profits for it would be absolutely horrible. But when combined with the Rule 37, it produces jaw-dropping results. Remember that buys are ignored above the average. So even though Rule 37 says there should be a buy here, the system knows better and doesn't. And as you can see, sell finds its way down, buy. So as you can see, entry point, exit point. But for the standpoint of the meat of this process, the dollar cost averaging module is all that really needs to be. And here it is. Simple, to the point, and precise. Even on coins of lesser quality, this recipe works unusually well. As you can see, coins you would not expect to produce this kind of a profit on a 1 minute time frame. But let's get to a coin that pulled off something special today. Something unexpected for its time frame. If I can find it here. Okay, wrong exchange. It helps if I'm on the right exchange. Okay, right here, 9% profit. And the average on a 1 minute time frame of 4%. This coin generally does not produce that type of result. It's not a very strong coin typically, but this recipe manages to pull it off. Very unusual approach for a very nice market. And as you can see, very controlled. Four positions. So basically $40, crudely speaking, $4 profit. A little less, maybe 3.5. It spent 2 weeks testing this to ensure these results were correct. because these are not the kind of results you expect on this type of market process. These results typically don't exist on time frames this small. These results are accurate though. And it does and is capable of doing just what it shows. Again, I emphasize this is specifically and strictly high risk. Do not underestimate how bad this can go, because it can go bad quickly. So if you do change your exit position, test it out carefully. There is no substitution for research, especially with a recipe like this. This is not something to take lightly. It may look like the golden egg of trading, or the holy grail of perfect profits, but it does have a very dark side. And markets can turn out to be very ugly when they turn against you. There is no predictability that can describe how bad this market can get if the coin is not a good choice. I have seen coins produce 16% underwater results as the average. So that tells you that this should not be simply left alone and not watched. And if you start getting too many runs of exit positions back to back, it will decimate your profits. So while it is capable of producing very good results, it is also capable of devastating losses. Let's see if I can find one of these coins that demonstrates negative results. This is a coin where the devil is in the details. Excuse me, this is a recipe where the devil is in the details. And you need to check every one of them, because everything looks like lavender and lace on the surface. Here's a good example. 4% profit on a 1 minute time frame for this coin. If you've ever traded this coin, you know this is not a realistic profit for this time frame, and yet it manages to somehow pull it off. So as we proceed through some of these coins, you can see very easily it does produce exactly what it says it does. Here's another coin that just does not have a very good history producing a result that is unexpected for its time frame. In spending 3 years in crypto trading and 2 years trying to match the savings account's capabilities, this recipe really is the first one capable of getting close to what the savings account is able to do on a regular basis. The always-in approach of the savings account makes it harder to beat for profits. What kills the savings account is the fact that it can become channel locked very easily in deep market runs. Patience is the cure, but patience after 6 months can be very difficult. Here is another coin that just doesn't do well. So as you can see, yes, I could have taken a profit up here manually, but instead I let it complete, and boom. It's still a very nice profit. An advantage of this kind of recipe is you don't have to sit over it 24/7. You do have to keep control of the reins, but you don't have to hover it. Here's an example where if you had this coin, selling up here would have been a gold mine. Again, it's about picking the right coins, and not every coin is worth trading. You get the point, though, and you see where these coins can go. So while I am continuing to go through some of these charts, I want to touch on a slightly different topic. Ooh, that's nice. 5% average. I want to discuss what I've seen as a trend in the market that I find disturbing, and unfortunately legislatures in various jurisdictions have responded aggressively to it. And that is the overuse and abuse of people calling themselves professional traders. When you call yourself a professional, that means by the statute of law, you are registered with your jurisdiction as a legitimate business. My business, for example, is registered in education. Subsequently, I am a professional educator. When I worked at colleges and universities, I was accredited by those facilities as a professional educator to teach in various computer science classes and office administration. When I worked for being a chancellor in a church as historian, I was accredited by the institution I worked for as church historian. When I worked as a programmer, I was accredited by the various businesses that I worked for, either through contract or directly, as a professional programmer. When you use the term professional, or you hear somebody use the term professional, particularly in the cryptocurrency market, that tells you they had better be licensed as a financial advisor or a broker. That is the law and definition of what it means to call yourself a professional. And that is important, because if you call yourself a professional and you operate without a license in your legal jurisdiction, in this market particularly, the cryptocurrency markets, you deserve to be sitting right next to Bernie Madoff. There are simply too many scams and gimmicks in the crypto market not to be legitimate in your business if you are a true professional. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to be a professional trader, but you do need to be a professional. in my case, an educator. If you are a professional trader and you are working with other people's money, right off the bat, you're looking for some very serious headaches without those proper licenses. Congress has a big fight going on right now to require an overreach of people in the crypto market to be required to have brokers' licenses. This entire idiocracy stemmed from the abuse of people calling themselves professionals when they were technically not. In the crypto market, and really stocks and Forex, but I'm going to focus on the crypto market only, there are two real classes: the hobby trader and the survival trader. And there are very different distinctions between these two classes. Let's start with the survival trader. A survival trader is a person who lives only on their profits. They survive strictly on what they make out of the market. They pay their rent, they buy their food, whatever necessities they need in their life. If you live in the United States with an average cost of living of around $1,000, then that means you need to be able to generate that much money every single month to live on. That is a survival trader. Now, that could be said of a survival investor living on dividends. But the amount of money you need to accomplish that could easily be $100,000 or more. A survival trader is not an easy job. It's not an easy way to make a living, and it requires a very specific mindset. That mindset is 100% different than most other traders. Many people think they're going to come into this market and be able to quit their day job. They quickly realize that is not the case. You cannot simply come into the market and quit your day job without a very big budget to back it. It's just not realistic. Survival trading is a very difficult way to trade. Every trade counts, and every loss hurts. Too many losses, and you might not have a roof over your head. It's very stressful. It's very frustrating, and it is very tedious. I am not a survival trader. I am a hobby trader. Now, a lot of people don't like using that term, but the reality of it is, if you don't use your profits to live on, you are not a survival trader. That doesn't mean you might not use some of your profits to buy a coffee or pay a bill, but unless you are completely living on your profits only, you are not a survival trader. You are a hobby trader. In my case, the way I set my trading up, I counted my money lost as soon as it left the bank account. So any money that goes back to the bank account puts me ahead of the game. For me, it means my risks are a different situation altogether. I don't need to worry about bills being paid because they will be paid whether I win or lose in my trades. My break-even is my important part. For me, if I can manage to pay for the software I use to run my trading, I've done good. That is not always the case for a lot of people, and some months don't do well at all. But that's where you live on averages and you think on averages, because you make up the difference over the long term through the average. Hobby trading is a more relaxed environment. Survival trading is very intense and, unfortunately, high pressure. Everybody starts out as a hobby trader, especially when they are simply learning and trying to figure out what they need to know to become a better trader. You just don't start trading and get it right the first time. And even if you've been in this for years, you simply still don't get it right every time. The market is simply too unpredictable, too unforgiving, and too volatile. So if you know somebody who calls himself a professional trader, ask them for their license. Because in order to be a professional trader, they should be licensed in their jurisdiction, either as a financial advisor, a financial planner, or a broker. The crypto market has suffered dearly at the hands of misuse of terminology, and that is a critical problem that we face with many jurisdictions, not just the United States, looking to legislate and rein in this no man's land of free speech. Because free speech in this case is manipulation, misuse, and above all, misrepresentation of a person's skills and abilities. Legal businesses have to be accountable. They don't just have to be accountable to their customers. They have to be accountable to the jurisdictions they serve. That accountability ensures that people with the proper licenses and training don't just take people's money and run, or that there is some legitimate education to try to make the best and informed decisions to provide what an individual would seek in a business. You don't hire a neurosurgeon to operate on you when he has a degree in plumbing. He's not a neurosurgeon then. It's the same thing with the crypto market. If you call yourself a neurosurgeon, then you need to have the credentials of a neurosurgeon. If you call yourself a professional investor or trader, then you need to have the credentials in that profession. And that profession is finance. I call myself an educator. I teach. I teach through example of what Jackrabbit is capable of, my own profits and my own losses. I'm not a perfect trader. I'm not even the world's best trader. But through all three of those different items, you can learn what to do and what not to do. That is my skill. And that is one of the reasons why I am against signal provisions that are not algorithmic. If you provide a signal and it's not based upon a mathematical equation, how do you know as a consumer to this signal provider that you are getting quality material? What credentials do they have to guarantee that your money is being looked after? Those credentials are their business license. If the crypto market is going to survive this year, then nomenclature needs to be kept in a professional context and brought in line with the standard financial markets. The cryptocurrency markets are no different than stocks and forex. There is nomenclature, terms, and rules that need to be followed. Whether you are a private individual buying and selling through an exchange, or a trader who is licensed in financial planning and advisory, or someone like me that teaches it. Through example, these situations need to be brought home, or we are going to continue to see legislatures and legal jurisdictions become overhanded to the point that we are going to see the crypto market literally legislated out of existence. A lot of people have already said that's impossible. No, it's not. Nothing is impossible to a government that doesn't want you to be able to purchase essentials without their permission. And any kind of scam or fraud that goes on in a market just ramps up a government's desire to be overly handed. I should say overly heavy-handed in legislation. This market could very well be a thriving future for finance, but if it's not kept in a professional manner, it will burn in ashes. Everybody wants to make money, from the individual to the professional who does have the legal licenses. But all it takes is a few rotten apples to ruin the market for everyone. I suppose the point of this rant is to bring attention to the fact that we need to keep this market properly balanced and legal, not just at the professional side or the educator side, but also at the individual side. The IRS has decided to levy out, last count was 120,000 letters for people that owe taxes. That's a lot of people. This is a new technology. New technologies always have growing pains associated with them. Scam artists can make it even worse. Scam artists can ruin the ability of the average Joe being able to simply make a decent income. I suppose my final thoughts on this is, when you're working with somebody in the field of crypto, know who you're working with. If they are a true professional and they have the licenses for their businesses, ask for them, verify them, verify the results. The cryptocurrency market is no different than any other market. When you trust your money for somebody else to manage, you want to know you have the right person managing it. If you are learning from an educator, look at the material. Make sure that the material is giving you information you can verify. All markets have their good and their bad, but it's up to the general consumer to make sure the markets stay honest as a whole. And businesses or individuals that disrespect or abuse a market shouldn't be given money. In fact, they should be called out and listed for the scams and frauds they are committing. Until next time.